what Uthaymeen said, that it means understanding. So Usool al-Fiqh is the roots of our understanding. What's fiqh? Technically, fiqh means where or how we derive rulings from the Quran and Sunnah and other primary sources as well. So the Quran and the Sunnah are the primary sources, and I'll talk about the sources shortly. So Usool al-Fiqh is like the anatomy to the surgeon. So it's how any surgeon has to understand how the body works before they cut it, right? The same way any faqih has to understand the usul al-fiqh, the anatomy of fiqh, to be able to derive rulings and serve them for people that are asking questions. So this is like the formula behind fiqh. So sometimes the difference between fiqh is just giving the ruling, right? You ask a mufti, what is the ruling of drinking alcohol? It's haram. But Usul al-Fiqh deals with how did he reach the answer? How did he get the answer? So Usul al-Fiqh is the basis of how fiqh works, is the skeleton behind or within the body of fiqh. So obviously, the first thing we have to define after this is al-ahkam. What is the meaning of ahkam? Ahkam is the plural of hukm. So the definition of hukm is rulings derived from the sources of Sharia. So the same thing we said. So fiqh is the science of deriving rulings for the benefit of the ummah, for the maslaha, the reform of the ummah. So somebody needs an answer, you have to derive the ruling from the Quran or the Sunnah, and that particular ruling is called a hukm, a ruling. Again, the ahkam are divided into two. There are two types of ahkam. There is ahkam al-taklifiyya and ahkam al-wada'iyya. Ahkam al-taklifiyya and ahkam al-wada'iyya. We'll start with explaining what ahkam al-taklifiyya is. It's very simple and straightforward. A lot of people find it quite interesting when they understand what ahkam al-taklifiyya is and how the other ahkam, which I'm coming to after this, how they work together. So what's ahkam al-taklifiyya? Is the 5 categories of rulings in which all actions of a mature person can fall under. So there are 5 categories of rulings in which the actions of you and myself can fall under. And they're simple, as you can guess. Of course, they are wajib, haram, halal, makruh, and mustahab. These are called ahkam al-taklifiyya. What's the meaning of taklif? Taklif means having responsibility. Kallafa, right? He was, if somebody, la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. That's where Allah uses it. Allah does not burden a people with what they cannot bear. So that word taklif is, if a person is a mukallaf, it means he has to bear a burden. And in fiqh, they use the term mukallaf for a matured person, the person that has his book open, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is recording his actions for him. So a matured person, a lady who has reached puberty, and a man who has reached puberty, they're mukallaf. They are people of responsibility. So these are the rulings that they have. The moment a person becomes a mukallaf, is matured, he has 5 things he have to watch out for: wajib, haram, halal, makruh, and mustahab. We will define them. So wajib is what is obligatory. It's fard. Some people call it fard, like the Hanafi school of thought. They have fard, wajib. So wajib means obligatory. Something is obligatory upon yourself, like fasting, prayer. And the people of Usul said they have a technical definition. They say wajib is what that if you perform it, you get rewarded for it. And if you avoid it, you get punished for it. So like salah. If you're a mukallaf, you're a matured person, if you pray, you get rewarded. If you don't pray, you get ithm, it's written down for you as a sin. And then you have haram. Haram it means impermissible. It means something that is not good for you. And the technical definition the Usool al-Fiqh scholars gave it is, it's something that if you do it, you're punished for it. And if you avoid it, you get rewarded for it. So if you don't drink alcohol because Allah told you not to, and you have that niyyah of serving Allah, then you get rewarded for that. That's the definition of haram. So of course, the person that avoids haram, some say he's actually much stronger than the person that only does the wajib but commits haram, because avoiding sins is actually a very difficult thing. You know, so you have halal. Halal is permissible, right? It's allowed. Like I usually give this example, like chin tuwo da miyan kuka. You don't get rewarded for it, even though some of the scholars say if you eat in order to serve Allah, your intention of eating is to serve Allah, then you get rewarded for it. So halal is permissible. It's a neutral thing. That's what we say. In Usool, you say it's neutral, right? It's like just deciding to go under a tree and sit down. Nobody said you should. There is no ayah or hadith that says if you sit under that tree, you're going to get rewarded for it. So it's a neutral action. It's up to you. You're allowed to wear a cap. You're allowed to wear the types of colors you want. These are halal things. You can use, you can eat what food you want. Nobody will dictate to you, except of course those things that Allah has prohibited for us, which is, I mean, they're clear. So that's halal. And then you have makruh. Makruh is something that is disliked or discouraged. Makruh, if you do it, you don't get punished, but it's not encouraged. And if you leave it, you get rewarded for it. This is the meaning of makruh. So for instance, what my teacher taught me a long time ago was makruh is everything halal in excess. So laughing too much is makruh. Nobody will say if you laugh too much, you're going to get punished by Allah. But if you laugh too much, it's not a good thing, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kana yakrihu al-qahqaha. The Prophet hated people that laughed with this kind of, you know, evil laughter or loud laughter. And of course, talking too much, sleeping too much, anything that is in excess is disliked, right? So that's makruh. So if you avoid it, you get rewarded for it with niyyah. So every action of ibadah has to be done with niyyah. Sometimes the niyyah is, most of the times, is in the heart, right? Nobody says nawaitu salatul dhuhr. I've made an intention to pray dhuhr. So that's that. And then you have mustahab. Mustahab is what is encouraged, right? So it's the opposite of makruh. It's encouraged, it's loved, right? Mahbub, it's something that is loved. So if you do it, you get rewarded. If you don't do it, you have missed the bonanza, but nobody will punish you. Like praying tahajjud, tarawih, rawatib, the nawafil, right? For the whole day, giving sadaqah, it's mustahab. Nobody will say you have to give sadaqah, but if you give it, you're rewarded. So these are the ahkam al-taklifiyah. These are, so every ruling in fiqh has to fall into this category. And now this is the work of the usul al-fiqh. Now the faqih has to use this to give fatwa and give rulings. What he's concerned with is this 5 things for the mukallaf. So if a person comes and says, Shaykh, what is this? What is that? What is this permissible? Is this impermissible? What do I do? Or I did this and that, give me a ruling. His concern will be where does this particular thing that the person is asking about falls under? Is it haram? So I will tell him, look, it's haram, fahadhir, and then I'll warn you. Or it's not haram, it's halal. So you will say, oh, just do it if you want. If you don't want, it's your choice. It's neutral. It's mustahab. Mustahab is, if you do it, you get rewarded. Like somebody asks you, Shaykh, what is the ruling of istikhara? Right? Istikhara, asking Allah for choice. Then we'll say, it's not wajib. You don't have to do it. But if you do it, it's mustahab because you are rewarded for it because it's an action that you perpetrated despite not being asked to do so. So those are the things that you should be aware of. Ahkam al-taklifiyah, you should be very concerned about these things. And inshallah, as I said, Shuraim will share I can see it's on the screen already. So those are the definitions, even though mine isn't clear, but inshallah, you'll all have it but you should study further. You should study on your own. So these things are wajib. These things are haram. These things are makruh. You should learn this. You should learn this terminology so that you can have discussions. If a sheikh says to you, so and so, Muhammad, this is a makruh for you, right? Then you will stop it, right? So good. Then the next interesting thing is ahkamul wada'iyya. Ahkamul wada'iyya. These are the rulings that are placed. In other words, they are regulated. Let me give you an example. Ahkamul wada'iyya, simply, these are the rules that affect the taklifiyya. Right? There's a definition on the screen. Mine isn't still clear, but I hope yours is. Even if it isn't, inshallah, you get it from Shuraim. So the ahkamul wada'iyya are the rules that are regulating the taklifiyya, right? They're regulating the taklifiyya. So it's like when somebody learns law in the university, right? Then they study ethics. Or if, say, somebody studies medicine, then they study ethics. In other words, the ethics are regulating the medicine. So you know that you don't shout at it's not just about giving paracetamol or doing surgery, it's also about manners. So you know that if you're sitting next to a patient, you have to be mannerful, you have to be concerned about them. So ethics is regulating medicine. The same way, ahkamul wada'iyya, they are regulating the taklifiyya. Let me give you an example. Let's take the first one, sabab. I hope it's clear, mine isn't. Let's take the first one, sabab. Sabab means cause, right? Sababi, that's the same word in Hausa. Musabbib, the person, right? They say, some define it as a reason. Sababi. Me sababin ka na yin haka. What's your reason for doing this? So sabab, cause. So even though the Sharia gives us laws and rules, we have to wait for the sabab, the reason to do them. Like for instance, now, I can't just get up and say, well, let me start praying Maghrib. It's time for Maghrib. It's not, because the sabab, the cause for the Salat al-Maghrib is not yet there. And what's the cause? Every action must have a cause. So the cause for praying Salat al-Dhuhr is when the sun is directly, right? When, hold on. Alhamdulillah. So every action must have a sabab, a cause. So the sabab for Salatul Maghrib is when the sun has set, right? That's why it's called the sunset prayer. The Isha prayer is when there's darkness, right? So the cause for prayer is the time. You can't pray any prayer when you want. You have to wait for the cause. So even though it's wajib to pray dhuhr, you have to wait for the sabab, the reason or the cause for the salah to come. For instance, I just can't fast Ramadan in Muharram. Why? Because it's not the month. Allah says, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Whosoever, right? Whosoever witnesses the month of Ramadan should fast. So the sabab, the cause for Ramadan, is the month to come, right? And the shart, the condition. Now you have to be in a certain condition to be able to pray. You have to meet certain conditions to pray. You have to meet certain conditions to give zakah. You have to, so these are conditions. These are the things that have to be in place before the deed is accepted. Shara'i. The shara'i, so I will say something like the shart of a person becoming muballigh, or somebody that has taklif, that's puberty. Before a person becomes an adult, he has to have the wet dream or other signs. Before a woman is considered a matured woman, she has to have her menses. So this is the condition, right? So for instance, a condition for prayer. Now we have, let's give dhuhr again as an example. So the sabab, the cause for praying dhuhr, is the sun, right? Coming right at the middle. Now the shart, the condition for praying dhuhr is what? You have to have wudu. You have to have wudu. You have to have and then you have to have wudu. So these are conditions. So before you pray, the conditions have to be fulfilled. Let me give you an example with zakah. Zakah, the sabab for zakah is that you have to have the nisab, the actual money that has reached zakah. Say the nisab is 2 million naira. So you have to have 2 million. And now what is the shart? The shart is it has to be there for over a year, right? That's the shart, the condition. And again, you have what you call the mani'. This is very interesting and important. Mani'. Mani' means an obstacle or a hindrance. So let me give you an example again with Salatul Dhuhr. The Salat of Dhuhr is, let's say, 12:50, right? So it's time for prayer. Nobody would argue. It's time for prayer. But the obstacle is now, I am not, let's say it's a woman. She's menstruating. So that's a mani'. She can't pray. So it has become an obstacle for her to do the wajib and she's excused. So let's say somebody, it's Ramadan and somebody is extremely sick. In fact, he's in a coma. So that's a mani', it's an obstacle. So menses is mani' for women. Sickness can be a mani' for people performing obligatory ibadah. And you have other examples. Again, let me give you another good example. So this is in Sharia. A person would inherit his father, right? If he dies, a son, he would take money or whatever asset or property the father leaves behind. So if he kills the father, God forbid, the Sharia forbids him from taking the inheritance. So this is a mani'. So killing somebody would become an obstacle for you in taking the inheritance. The inheritance is wajib, but now it will not be given to you because there's a mani'. So some people can perform an action when there's an obstacle and it's haram to do so. So a wajib like Salatul Dhuhr can become haram for a woman if she's in her menses. So even in Usool, the scholars talk about how the rules change. And the regulator, which is the ahkamu taklifiyya, wada'iyya, which is what we're talking about, these are the things that can change the rulings, especially with the mani'. So if an obstacle comes, it stops you from doing the thing that is expected from you. And of course, there's sahih and there's batil. They go together. So sahih is the things that you know would make your prayer valid. So let's say I'm praying Salatul Dhuhr. The part of what will make it sahih, a correct prayer, is if I pray it correctly. So if I have like my clothes on, if I cover my aura, then I am praying correctly. Now, if I'm praying with clothes that are not covering my aura, this is batil. So I have spoiled my prayer. So sahih and batil. Sahih is following the rules. So it's not like saying, oh, it's time for prayer, let's just pray the way we want, right? No, we have to pray in accordance to the sunnah of the Prophet. So we'll come to that inshallah tomorrow. We'll explain how. So let me give an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Aqimus salah. Husayda salah. You know, pray. Aqimus salah, right? Pray. Now, how do I pray? I have to pray the way the Prophet asked me to pray. So I have to go to the hadith now and follow through on how to pray. So this is what I mean. So that's what will make my prayer sahih. Just because Allah says, wasjudu warka'u ma'arraki'in. Do sujood and do ruku' with the people that do them. It doesn't mean the prayer is just sujood and ruku'. I have to go to the sunnah, and this is what will make my prayer sahih. Now, if I omit these things, then subhanallah, I have omitted the sahih, right? And now it's batil, it's nullified. So sahih is what makes it valid, and batil is what can make your prayer go bad. Again, let me give an example. It's right there on the screen with Ramadan. So what's Ramadan? I have to fast it the way the Prophet asked me to fast it. Now, what happens if I eat? That's batil. I've spoiled my fasting, right? So you can, if something is wajib, like fasting Ramadan for a mukallif, for a person that's mature, now him or her eating spoils the fasting, and that's when we talk about batil. So there are certain things, the Hanafiya, I didn't put it there, but the Hanafiya talks about a fasid, which is in between. It doesn't spoil it, and it's not correct. You have, in other words, half-half. So for instance, they give examples. If somebody curses, like cursing doesn't spoil your Ramadan, but it makes it weaker than say a person that has fasted properly. So cursing not spoil your Ramadan, but it will, or backbiting, for instance. If you backbite somebody, doesn't a faqih cannot say your Ramadan is batil, it's spoiled. They would say something like fasada, you're corrupting it, you're making it not so good. So say if you're going to get 10 rewards, now you'll be given maybe 5. So they put it in between. That's the Hanafi. So there are schools of thoughts, but these are like general rules everybody agrees with. And the last one, according to the Usulis, is the azima and the rukhsa. The azima, these are primary actions. Let me give you an example. Again, the azima is what Allah asks you to do in full. So Allah asks you to pray Salatul Dhuhr 4 rak'ats. So you have to pray 4 rak'ats. If I'm at home, like today I'm at home, Salatul Dhuhr came and I had to pray 4 rak'ats. Now what happens if I'm on a journey? The Usuli say then the rukhsa, the reduced requirement, comes into place. So now I can pray qasr. So the wajib is for me to pray 4 rak'ats. But now because of my circumstance, I am on a journey, then I pray the rukhsa. The rukhsa can mean, the Hausa people, they say rahusa, means sauki. Rukhsa can also mean a license. If you're given a license to do something. So Allah has given you a rukhsa, a license to pray qasr, to pray 2 rak'ats. And say, for instance, you're traveling and Ramadan comes. Now you have a rukhsa, right? You don't have to. Or you gave birth to a baby and it's Ramadan, you don't have to fast, right? That's the rukhsa. So the azima is that you fast. But the rukhsa, when there's a requirement, like I'm fasting or I'm sick, وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. If somebody is marid, they're sick, or safar, ala safar, they're on a journey, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ, then they should pay back other days. In other words, they mustn't fast, they can pay back at a convenient time, right? So again, let me give you another example. The azima is before I perform salah, I have to perform ablution with water. Now, if there isn't water, then I have to do tayammum. Now, this is the rukhsa. So the azima is I have to perform ablution. Now there isn't water. So the rukhsa comes into play. The usulis are aware of this. So they're telling you it's wajib to use water, right? If you don't use water, you have committed a sin. Oh, but Sheikh, there isn't water. Okay, now you can use the rukhsa. Take the license that Allah has given you, the ease. Some people call rukhsa and ease, right? So this is ahkamu taklifiyya. You can see how they work together with the this is the wada'iyya, and you can see how they work with the taklifiyya. So something is haram, but if a mani' comes, a prohibitor comes, it makes it not haram anymore. So for instance, let me give an example, right? Where you can take a rukhsa. You're in a desert. The fiqhi people, the people of fiqh, they like this example. You're in a desert and you're dying, and then you find alcohol. They say you can drink it, right? Now this is a rukhsa, because if you don't, you're going to die. So something that is haram has changed. According to the Shafi'is, it has changed to wajib. Now you have to drink it to survive, because saving your life is much more important than dying, right? So this is the ahkam al-wada'iyya. Again, you can see that even somebody that prays, now you have to consider the sahih or batil. Has he prayed correctly? Or he did only one sujood for every rak'ah. That's not a good prayer, so we call it batil. It's not sahih, it's batil, right? So these are the wada'iyya. They regulate your taklifiyya, and they can change the rules. They can change the rules. Good. So the next thing is the sources of Sharia. The sources of Sharia, we can go to the next slide, screen share, please. The sources of Sharia, how do we get rulings? Well, from the sources. The Quran is the first source, right? The revealed word of Allah. Allah revealed it, so we have to follow through with it. And then you have the hadith, what the Prophet said. So the actions, the words, and of course the tacit approval of the Prophet ﷺ, these are considered hadith. So the sunnah of the Prophet. So the Quran, Allah says, لله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا. Allah has commanded us people to go to Hajj, right? So we take the ruling من استطاع إليه سبيلا for those who have the recourse to do so. So we take that as a ruling. Hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, right? Asbaghil wudu, perfect your wudu. This is a ruling. We get it from the hadith. Now there is ijma. Ijma is the consensus of the scholars, the people of Ahlus Sunnah, right? The consensus. So if people, it's from the word ijma, jama'a, to gather and bring out an agreement. So if the scholars gather, rather if the Sahaba, so I'll come to the differences of opinion, remind me tomorrow. Ijma is when the Sahaba, primarily the Sahaba, decide to come together and agree on something. Agree on something. So let me give an example. If the Prophet is alive, nobody can do ijma because the lawgiver is sending wahi to the Prophet. You don't need to gather and come up with something. You just need to ask him. That's why the Quran is filled with certain verses. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِلَّةِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ, right? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ. They ask you regarding drinking alcohol, give them the answer. They ask you regarding menstruation, this is the answer. So if the Prophet is alive, you can't do ijma. After the Prophet, an example of ijma, the Sahaba decided to make 2 adhan for the Salatul Jum'ah, and it was agreed upon, and now it has become Sharia, it's law. And that's why we have it everywhere, right? We have it everywhere. Everywhere you go to, as long as they're people of Sunnah, they have to do the adhan twice. And this is a Sahaba, the Sahaba coming together under the authority of Uthman. He was caliph at that time, and they agreed upon this, and it became Sharia. The ijma is a consensus of people, right? Primarily the Sahaba, they have the strongest kind of ijma because they're the best of people. And then Imam Malik said we can agree with the ijma, the consensus of the people that came after the Sahaba, and he stopped there. And then some people like Imam Shafi'i said, no, you can take ijma even today. Like scholars today in Kaduna or Abuja can come together and decide, let's make this a rule, right? So let's say the people of Saudi, the scholars did an ijma, the consensus, and they put out a fatwa and they stopped women from driving, and then they reversed it. It's an ijma. It's a consensus amongst the scholars. Apparently, that's what they told us, that all the scholars agree. Ijma cannot be, right? Ijma cannot be done when there's a disagreement. So let's say the scholars like this point. They say if 100 people come together to make ijma and one person disagrees, it's not an ijma, because that one scholar can be right. This is the beauty of Islam. It knows that people can have the intellectual capacity to go against the flow and they can be correct. So it's not an ijma if there is a dissent. Again, qiyas, this is the interesting one. Qiyas is reasoning, right? Analogical reasoning. So you take, this is where, let me give you an example. It's right there on the screen for people that have it. So heroin, it's haram. Why? But do you have a verse that says heroin is haram? No. Do you have a verse that says marijuana, for like weed, is haram? No, you don't. So how is it haram? Simple. Because there's a ruling in the Quran that says that إنما الخمر والميسر والأنساب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. That خمر والميسر, gambling and drinking alcohol are haram. They're the handiworks of shaitan, Allah says. فاجتنبوه, leave them, لعلكم تفلحون, so that you'll be successful. So the ruling here is haram. So why would you say heroin is haram? Because why Allah made alcohol haram is because of its intoxicative nature. Heroin intoxicates you. In fact, there's some things that can make you go crazy worse than alcohol. So the intoxication is the problem here. So if this will intoxicate you, we have to put it under the same ruling with alcohol. Why? Because the factor of intoxication is the same or even worse, or even not up to alcohol, but it's still intoxicating. So stop it. It's haram. So that's analogy. Analogy, there's a lot of rulings, or there are a lot of rulings today that are based on qiyas, because they are contemporary, they're new things. They didn't happen during the time of the Prophet ﷺ or when the Quran was being revealed. So the scholars don't have it in the Quran, they don't have it in the Hadith. They check the ijma, the consensus of the Sahaba. Have they discussed it? Has it ever happened during their period? No, it hasn't. So now we have to make qiyas. Let's look in the Quran and Sunnah and see what is similar, right? And then we join them together with their common factor. So in the case of alcohol, intoxication is the common factor with any other hard drug that can intoxicate you. So that drug will become haram just as alcohol is haram. This is qiyas, very interesting. Some people did it with shisha as well. They said shisha can harm you, and some did it with cigarette because Allah says, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Don't render yourself to destruction with your own hands. So they said smoking, because now we can find that it is harming the lung and it can give cancer. So we would use this verse to say, look, harm is harm. There is harm in smoking, and Allah said, don't harm yourself. So qiyas, stop smoking. Khalas. That's how it's done. It's quite interesting. The rules of qiyas is quite interesting to know this. So first you have to find, right? Let's go to the next slide. I think that's the last slide. So these are the components of qiyas, how you perform qiyas. I've explained it, but these are the technical terms. Let's put it on the screen, please, for the brothers and sisters. So the first, should I wait? Let me wait 2 seconds.
Yes, 2 seconds.
Because, yes, I'll wait for you to put it because it's quite important for people.
This is of Sharia?
No,
Okay.
not sources of Sharia. Inshallah, I hope I'm not confusing you. I'm trying to explain these things, but I think, as I say to all the students that we study together, because we're all students, is we should always read further, we should read deeper than we do. And these are part of the religion. If you understand these things, everything becomes easy. So qiyas is right there, components of qiyas. So let me give you an example with the verse we just read about alcohol, right? So the original case is alcohol. The reason it's called asl, the original case, is because alcohol is there in the Quran. So it's an asl, it's a foundation. It's right there in the Quran. So legal ruling of the original case is the hukm al-asl. So what's the ruling of alcohol? We know it's haram. So we write that down. So we always, if you're doing your qiyas, these are the 4 rules. The first is, what's the asl? Right? What's the asl? Hold on a second. I'm just checking through with something. Alhamdulillah. So what's the asl? The asl is alcohol, right? That's what we're talking about. The hukm al-asl, the ruling of the asl is haram, right? Alcohol. So now the new case or the parallel case, that's the far', right? Whenever you see an apostrophe in transliterating Arabic, it's usually an ayn or a hamza that has a sukun. So that's the far'. Far'un. So the far' is the new case. In this case, let's say heroin, right? Or sholisho, or rochi, or benelin with codeine, right? So it's a far', as long as you're not taking it in the context of medicating. These are the examples. So the far' is the new case. I think it's off the screen again. Put it back, it's very important. Good. So the far' is the new case. And then you look for the illah, the effective cause or the factor. The illah is intoxication. So the illah is what made haram, what made alcohol haram. Yes, because it's intoxicating you. It's making you do crazy things. Like Umar radiallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him, the great Sahaba, he said, look, I wish Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make alcohol haram. You know, there's some weak hadith out there about Umar that he used to drink a lot before he was Muslim. This is not true. They're very weak hadith. They're fabricated hadith, actually. Ibn Jawzi put them under the mawdu'at. They're fabrications. And a lot of people, especially the Shia, they like these things, so they put them out. You know, like Umar was burying his daughter and she was doing this to him, and he was crying and he didn't want to do it, but he still went on and buried her. These are all fabrications. In fact, the Sahih Hadith tells us about Umar, when the person came and said, this was after Islam, Umar was caliph, and a man came and he was telling them the story of how he buried his daughter. Umar wept and he said, if not for Islam, I would have killed you because of that, right? The had, the punishment, I would have killed you too. But of course, Islam takes away that. يَجُبُّ مَا قَبْلَ. So I'll let you be. So the effective cause is intoxication. Umar said, I wish Allah will make alcohol haram, because it makes people do things that are very undignifying. They say things they shouldn't say. They behave in a very rude manner. And then Allah revealed the verse because it came in batches. Allah understood more than anyone else, because He's our creator, that this thing's addiction has to follow through in batches. You have to do the withdrawal phase in batches. So of course it came in batches, but the final prohibition came when Allah prohibited it. So that's the illah. The illah here is, why is it haram? Is because of the intoxication. The factor that makes it haram is the intoxication. So again, what makes qiyas? How do we do qiyas? We follow these components. Let me give you the example I just gave again. So heroin, it's not in the Quran, not in the Sunnah, not in the consensus of the Sahaba or the righteous predecessors. So we go back to the Quran and look for something similar. This is it. Alcohol. So that's the asl. What's the ruling? It's haram. What's the new thing? Heroin. You put it under the far. How are they similar? What's the illah? The illah is intoxication. Yes, alcohol intoxicates, heroin intoxicates, and there you go. You've done your qiyas, so you say al-far ala hukmul asl. The far, the new case, is the same ruling, or is on the same ruling as the original, in this case alcohol, and that's finished. That's qiyas, right? Qiyas. So Allah says, we have the dua of the travel, right? If you're traveling, Allah says you should make dua. But you see, the Prophet had a horse, or duldul, his donkey, right? It's called duldul. He has a camel, right? So now you have a car. It's the same thing. You have to make qiyas. The car is like the donkey. So that's it. So when you're entering the car to travel, you make dua. That's it. Those things are made from qiyas. And that's the end of it. I think we have discussed this on a very basic level. It gets more complicated with more examples, but as long as you understand the basic, the more advanced you get, the clearer it becomes. The last thing I would want to talk about is Imam al-Shafi'i. You can bring the video back, Shurain. Imam al-Shafi'i, radiallahu anh, is one of the heroes of the Usool al-Fiqh people, right? He started it. Usool al-Fiqh is a codification of ideas, or rather not ideas, principles, to how to look at the Quran, how to derive rulings from the Quran. It's not easy. You just can't come and say, do this. For instance, let me give you an example. In Usul, you have to understand Amr and Nahi, command, right? And, a stop. When Allah puts a stop, don't do this, right? Let me give you an example. Somebody can read the verse, or rather can like from hadith. It happens usually in hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says, Man asha bila asa faqad asa Abul Qasim. Whoever walks without a stick has disobeyed Abul Qasim, even though it's a weak hadith. But Imam Shafi'i takes it on and he says, it doesn't mean it's haram. The Prophet is saying it's mustahab, right? When the Prophet ﷺ says, Laysa minna man la yuwaqqir kabirana. He's not amongst us, he who doesn't honor our old people. It doesn't mean he's not a Muslim. But you see, somebody that doesn't understand the sciences, the usul of fiqh, to understand how to go into the hadith and Quran and derive rulings, will say anybody that disrespects the old person is not a Muslim. No, but you have to understand the Arabic, you have to understand the context. The Sahaba had no problems because they were Arabs, they were with the Prophet, and he showed them how to do these things. The issue is with us, because now we're reading the text, but some of us are Indonesian, some of us are Nigerian, some of us are from different parts of the world, and we're not Arabs. So we can misuse the rulings, or we can misplace the rulings, and we get into a big fitna. This is what I think a lot of terrorists do. So let me give an example of how it's important to understand how to derive rulings from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you meet those who disbelieve, وَإِذَا لَقِيتُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَضَرْبَ الرِّقَابِ, if you meet those who disbelieve, just hit their necks, kill them. And this is what Sheikho takes, and he says it out there, and this is wrong, because the context is the tafsir. If you go to the tafsir, it was revealed for it has a sabab, and that's why even tafsir you have sabab al-nuzul, the cause, the reason for revelation. It was revealed in a time of war. The Muslims had to wait until Allah revealed, right? And Allah said to the Prophet, permission has been given for the believers to fight back because they have been oppressed. They had to wait for the revelation to come. So this was said about fighting. Defend yourself, fight. And they forget to quote the other verse that came after that. Look, if the person, the non-Muslim, asks for security, call them to your place and give them safety. Unless, rather, they should hear the words of Allah. And if they don't take it and it's all over, then let them go. Right? There is no la ikraha fi din, there's no compulsion in religion. So you have to look at the Quran and the Sunnah with a dynamic view of usul. What is the meaning of this? Is this an amr? Is it a command? Al-amr ala wajib, is it wajib, or is it just like a mustahab? Allah is telling me to do it, to do good things, right? To get rewarded for it. You know, so like witr, the salat of witr, the Hanafis taught the hadith was on the scale of wajib. So they say you have to pray witr, right? And the Malikis, we say, no, it's not wajib, it's mustahab. It's good you pray witr. In fact, the sunnah mu'akkada is a very strong sunnah. You shouldn't leave it out because of the virtues. So this is how it's important. I think I'll show you something here. This is one of the books that started to codify, right? It started codifying. I got it a long time ago at a second-hand shop in Liverpool, and it's by Imam al-Shafi'i. It's called the Risala. He started to codify fiqh in this book, and it became a thing, and the scholars realized, wow, we have to do this. We have to start following these laws, because a lot of Muslims don't understand these things. Like, for instance, let me give you an example. So one time the Prophet ﷺ saw a group of people surrounding a person who was lying on the floor. And so he went and he said, what's wrong with this man? And they said, Subhanallah, he's a righteous person. It's Ramadan. He came all the way from Yemen. He's fasting. You know, he's a righteous man. He's not breaking his fast. So the Prophet ﷺ says, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ مِنْ صِيَامٍ صَفَرٍ. He actually spoke in the dialect of the Yemenis, because the Prophet spoke all languages. So he said, it's not from righteousness that a person fasts during his journey, right? Perhaps these people didn't know the rukhsa, so the Prophet is teaching them. It's not righteousness because you think you're a great Muslim, you have to fast when you're traveling. If you can, do it. But if you can't, don't bother yourself, because yuridullahu bikum al-yusra wa la yuridu bikum al-usra. Allah wants ease for you, and He doesn't want hardship for you. So the importance of Imam Shafi is he began to see the necessity of codifying these principles in textual form for people to have access, so that they can understand better how the Sharia works. And it was followed by great scholars. And this is a small text, about 200 pages, by Abdul Karim al-Zaidan al-Wajiz fi Usool al-Fiqh. It's a very good book. You can read it with a teacher. I've studied this book some years back. It's a very, very good book. Tomorrow I will show you the Mustasfa of Imam al-Ghazali, which is considered by Malan Jafar, may Allah have mercy on his soul, as one of the primary texts that if anybody wants to be a good Usuli scholar or student, then he has to have the Mustasfa of Imam al-Ghazali. And these are the smaller versions which will open the doors. We have studied this with my teacher, and with some of my friends Alhamdulillah, maybe some of you here, Shuraim, you have joined us in this class. Usool min ilm al-usul by Uthaymeen is a very, very good book. I heard that it was translated. It's very small, as you can see, just a couple of pages, maybe 100, 70 to 80. And of course, this is another book that talks about it, but this is about the maqasid, the objectives of Sharia, which we will talk about tomorrow, inshallah. This is by Ibn Ashur. I love this book because I couldn't get the Arabic, so alhamdulillah, I got a very beautiful translation here. And you can buy this, I think, on Amazon by Ibn Ashur. I love it because it's from a fellow African scholar. So I think we've come to the end. We should all be grateful for the likes of Imam al-Ghazali, of course, his master, the Shafi'i madhab master, Imam al-Shafi'i, Muhammad al-Idris. And yes, so this is the basics of some of the usul principles. So you have learned the ahkamul taklifiyya, the rulings that your actions have to fall under: haram, wajib, halal, makruh, mustahab. So something is either a wajib, obligatory, or it's haram, it's forbidden, or it's mustahab, it's encouraged, or it's makruh, it's disliked, even though you don't get punished for it, or it's halal, it's allowed, it's your choice. And then you have the ahkam al-wada'iyya, the things that actually regulate the ahkam al-taklifiyya. So even if something is haram, it can be made halal in some situations, like in a death situation where somebody, like, let me give you a classic example that I forgot. Ammar bin Yasir was a companion of the Prophet, amongst the huge companions. Barakallah fi. May Allah be pleased with them all. And he was tortured by his master to the point, they kept asking him, curse the Prophet, curse the Prophet. And he was in pain, and it was so much so that he had to curse the Prophet. They let him go, and he ran to the Prophet. He said, "Khudni ila Rasulullah kay uqabbila qadamay." Take me to the Prophet, I want to kiss his feet. When he went, he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I'm finished, I cursed you." The Prophet said, "No, they forced you. It's okay. If they ask you to do it again, you should do it and save your life." So it's haram, it's kufr to curse the Prophet. But what if you're tortured by these people like Ammar bin Yasir was, and the Prophet gave him a way out? So the wada'iyya, and a verse was revealed about this. Allah says it's no problem as long as your heart is filled with iman. So and that's why the Prophet asked him, "How did you feel when you cursed me?" He said, "My iman was intact, Ya Rasulullah." He said, "It's fine. If they ask you to do it again, do it." So you can see how something haram and even to the verge of kufr can be allowed in dire circumstances, and certain things that are haram or halal can actually be haram. So for instance, if I'm a wealthy person, I pray I am, and there's some weak people that need food, and there's one plate of food there, it's haram for me to eat it. I have to give it to them. So things like that. The mani' there is my wealth. The prohibitor there is, because I have wealth, I'm not allowed to eat the food, because here are some people that don't have a mani', which is wealth here, so they have to eat the food. Is halal for them, but it's haram for me. Even though some say, some like to do fiqh around this, but these are principles that we should abide by. And right, those are the wada'iyat. So even though it's time for dhuhr, you have to wait for the sabab, which is the time factor. The shart is the condition. Now, what's the condition of my prayer being sahih, correct? Of course, ablution, right? At-tahara miftahu salah. The Prophet said that purification is the key to prayer. So I have to perform ablution, and these are the kind of things that will make my prayer correct or incorrect. I have to cover my awrah. So even though I have prayed, right, it's wajib for me to pray a dhuhr. If I prayed without covering my awrah, then now it's haram. Now Ibn Taymiyyah is interesting. He says, for somebody that has been imprisoned and disgraced, because certain rulers used to do this, they still do, a'udhu billah. In some parts of the world, they would imprison people and strip them, and then that's to humiliate them. So if that happens, Ibn Taymiyyah says, let them pray like that. So it's haram to pray like that, but in this case, let them pray, right? So rukhsa, if you don't know the way of the qibla, like the Prophet ﷺ, he said, when you're on a journey and you don't know the qibla, then just face the best place you can find and pray. So there's a rukhsa, there's a license. Even though the azima, the main thing is to face the qibla, now you can't. So the rukhsa comes into play, like the qasr, when I'm on a journey and says, take it easy. And there's a rukhsa for pregnant women, for women that are suckling, as long as they can't fast. Some are very strong and they can. So I want to stop here, even though I have 5 more minutes. Alhamdulillah, I normally don't keep to time, but I've managed to do so. But I hope I haven't given you a headache. And this is just an introduction for you. There's so many examples, inshallah, to come. Tomorrow will be a bit more deeper than this. Inshallah, we'll have to define some terms and see how the Quran and Sunnah operate in the Sharia and things like that. So, barakallah fikum. I hope this has been beneficial to you.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah, Sheikh Muhammad, jazakallah khair. This is beautiful.
Not Sheikh. Muhammad Abdullah khalas. Yeah.
So inshallah,
there's a Arab poem. They say yaz'amuni shaykhan wa ani lastu shaykhan innama shaykhu man yadibbu dabiba. They say I'm sheikh. One of the scholars was called sheikh. He said they claim I'm a sheikh. The sheikh is a person that walks with a stick. And I'm very young, so don't make me old.
Hayakum Allah, barakallahu feek, jazakallah khair. So inshallah, we're just going to go to the questions and we address them inshallah for the rest minutes. So the first question is, what is the difference between halal and mustahab? Since when halal is done, it still attracts reward when the subah was followed.
Sorry, go on.
I think it's just asking what is the difference between halal and mustahab.
Okay. Halal is something that is neutral. So you see, some scholars made it as simple as, sitting down. It's halal, right? It's halal to sit down. But let's take it a bit more seriously than that. So halal is eating anything you like. Like you like cucumbers, right? That's it. It's halal to eat lizards. Like the Prophet ﷺ was given lizards by Khalid ibn Walid and he didn't eat it. And he said, I don't like this. And Khalid said, give it to us. We're used to it because we're people that go to war. And these are the kind of foods we eat. So halal is anything that is just neutral. You can't say, oh, you have done a righteous action. Oh, I just ate tuwo. Oh, good, you have hasanat, inshallah. No, you don't. This is where the scholars like Ibn al-Hajj say, if you eat tuwo with the intention of going to jihad, you say Bismillah, and then your intention is to go to jihad because they're fighting, or this doesn't happen now, so I'm not calling for it, by the way. But you're doing it so that you can build a mosque, perhaps. And you say, like, bring me the food and I'll eat so that I can get the energy. They say the niyyah makes it like a praiseworthy action and Allah will reward it. Like spraying perfume is mustahab, because now the Prophet has made it mustahab. He said to the men, spray the perfume, meet your guest. When he was spraying the perfume on his beard, Aisha got really jealous and he said, Ya Aisha, I've been commanded to meet my guests and honor them. So this is part of honoring the guest, right? So the halal is something that is very neutral, right? But the mustahab is like praying nafila. Mustahab, you're encouraged, but it's not wajib. So nobody said you have to pray a witr. But if you decide to pray witr after your shafa'i, then that is good. It's beautiful. You get reward for that. A lot of it, by the way. Like raka'atan al-fajr is not it's not wajib, but it's sunnah. Mu'akkada is a very strong sunnah. So these are the mustahab. Like nobody would say, Mesa bakabada ku'iba sadaqah, right? Why didn't you give the charity? No, it's a choice, but you should give it. The one that is wajib is the zakah, right? So sadaqah now is mustahab. If you give it, it's praiseworthy. If you don't get rewarded, but you miss an opportunity. It's like a bonanza. So that's the difference. One is a bonanza, one is just neutral.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah. The next question is, what do you think about physical distancing in Salah? Is it batil or sahih? I see mosques where people give space in the sahu.
Alhamdulillah, this is very, very interesting. So, and this is where Imam Abu Hanifa came in and he said, look, you could do certain things that would not spoil your Salah. It's not batil, but it's fasid. It's in between. You shouldn't have done it. So you see, the joining of the row is considered sunnah mu'akkada. It's not, you don't have it in the rukn. Nobody has ever read in a fiqh book that joining the sahu is part of it. No, but takbirat al-tahrim, Fatiha, standing for Fatiha, ruku', raising from ruku', sujood, raising from sujood, the tahiyyah, the last one, right? These are the farillay, the fara'id. Nobody said joining the row is part of it, even though, and this is why usul is very important, because somebody said to me, Shaykh, why would you say that? You know, after all, Allah, the Prophet ﷺ says, لَتَسْتَوُنَّ صُفُوفَكُمْ أَوْ لَيَخْتَلِفَنَّ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَكُم. You either join your rows or Allah makes differences soar between you or your hearts. So this is wajib. No, I said, no, this is makruh. You shouldn't, if you do it intentionally, the Maliki say that's a sin. But you see now, if people pray with social distancing, it's not a bad thing entirely if they have the circumstances that have forced them to do so. But like in Nigeria now, that we are actually told not to go to the mosque as a matter of law, it's haram if we go. So it's good to stay home and join the rows with the people that we're certain don't have COVID-19, right? The moment you see somebody coughing, you isolate them. It's a wajib for you to do that, because you're isolating a fitna. Even though for us, pandemics or this kind of situations are rahmah, right? The Prophet said pandemics is an adhab for the kafir, but is a rahmah for the mu'min. So for us, it's fine. For people that go like Abba Kari, may Allah have mercy on his soul, inshallah, is a shaheed, is one of the shaheed that doesn't have the lesser reward, because if a woman dies from pregnancy, or somebody drowns, or he gets burnt with the fire till death, or the building collapses, these people, they die as shuhada, but they're smaller shuhada. The bigger shuhada is the person that dies in jihad, and the Prophet made him equal to the person that's killed by the virus or a pandemic like this one. Hadith Aisha radiallahu anha reported is in Bukhari, and many other books of hadith. So social distancing, sahu should not be done like that in the mosque if you can pray at home, because the law says it. So in the first place, avoid it. Now for people that pray like that, you can't say their salah is batil, their salah is sahih, but if you're Hanafi, you can say it's fasid. Even us in the Maliki madhab will say something like it's makruh to pray like that. It's disliked because you didn't join the sahu. So I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, mashallah. Please check how many naflas are there in a normal day and their time. I think this is a normal question. Yeah.
Yes, please. Let's send a message of the two hadith that have the differences, inshallah, and then it's a clear hadith. I'll send it to you, Sharem, and please post it.
So the next question is, how does the rukhsa of qasr apply to our lives in this day and age, considering that most of the reason it was allowable are no longer obtained, e.g. danger of attack, great distance of travel, etc.?
No. By the way, the Prophet ﷺ didn't say because of the attacks or things like that. No, it's just a rukhsa. The Prophet ﷺ said, these are the rukhsa given to you by your Lord. And listen to this. There are some people that have differences. Like Aisha radiallahu anha believed that if she can pray her full prayer with Uthman radiallahu anhu, this is his opinion, that you should then not take the rukhsa. This is his view. Ibn Umar differed. Ibn Umar thought, if Allah gives you rukhsa, you have to take it. How can Allah give you ease and you refuse to take it? This is a good view. It favors us because nobody can say, and again, we have to take the urf. We'll come to that. We'll talk about the maxims, the 5 maxims tomorrow. So there's a maxim, al-ada or al-urf muhakkama. Customs have to be ruled upon. So whatever is customary to us as travel is travel. If I'm in Kaduna now, if I'm going to Zaria, that's travel. So I can pray qasr. If I pray qasr, nobody can say to me, I've done something batil, incorrect. No, I've done something by using the hadith, and I've applied it in my case. And Ibn Taymiyyah agrees with this. If it's not your opinion, hold on to it. There are about 10 different opinions on qasr, the distance, and these things. But hold on to this. Your urf, your customary travel should be what your distance is or whatever. But nobody can say it's because of attack, or these could be part of it, but it's not specific to it. As long as you're given this rule, take it. My view is, if I go to a city, even though this is not the view of the Shafis, if I go to a city and they're praying their full prayer, I take the opinion of the Hanbalis, which is written in the books of Ibn Taymiyyah, the Majmu'. Also, this is the opinion of Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, that if they say Hayya ala salah and I hear it, like come to prayer, I should go. It's an invitation. Places where there's kufr and maybe I'm afraid, then I can stay in the room and I can pray qasr. So people that pray qasr, when they travel to their hometowns, they're entitled to it. People that want to pray in the mosque, like myself, with the other people, then I'm also entitled to it. Because I feel like they're praying, there's a jama'ah there, they're people, they're Muslims, and they're my brothers. So I would like to go and pray with them behind the imam. Yeah. So the rukhsa is not for because of the attack. So now you can just, no, you can still pray qasr.
Now, what is the Islamic ruling on masturbation?
It's haram. It's the best opinion is haram. I don't want to bring the differences because I've read in Ikhtilaf al-Fuqaha by Imam al-Tabari. It's a very small book, very interesting. I don't want to bring this because I don't think this is the way of our madhahib here. It's not the way that would favor our culture and of course the culture of the world, which is crazy. The things that are happening, if you allow those things to happen, then it's an issue. So let's just leave it to that, please. It's haram. Don't do it. Try as much as you can to fast and do other things and maybe get married if you can, inshallah.
All right. The next question is, Sheikh, is the saying of the Sahaba a hadith also?
It depends. If the Sahaba says it out of his own, if he says it by himself and it's clear that he's talking about stuff by himself, right? Then that's fine. It's his own words. But now there's something that's called if we study the sciences of hadith, inshallah, maybe next Ramadan we could do this, right? The usool of, now we're doing the usool of fiqh. There's also the usool of hadith, which is called the mustalah al-hadith. So if a companion says something that has to do with the range of the Prophet ﷺ, then it's not him talking. He's talking about the Prophet. So an example, Ibn Mas'ud said, when people are in the grave, this will happen to them, such and such will happen to them. But he didn't say the Prophet said it to me, right? The Prophet said, like usually, like Abu Hurairah says, Qala Rasulullah, Qala li Habibi, my beloved said to me, or Khalili. In some cases, he says, my friend, my intimate friend, things like that. But if the Sahaba didn't say that, he said, and maybe he just starts to talk about something that we know he doesn't have the knowledge of it, except that the Prophet told him, then we say this is raised to the Prophet ﷺ. They all have names in the sciences of hadith. Let's not go into too much detail. So the scholars have a way, a very simple and clear, direct way of identifying this is the word of the Sahaba. This is, of course, ascribed to the Prophet ﷺ. We have that a lot in the books of hadith. Even Bukhari has certain hadith that are like that. The Sahaba didn't say Qala Rasulullah or An Rasulullah or An Nabi or Sami'tu Rasulullah, I heard the Prophet say, but he says, directly that this and that. And then we say, okay, these things that the Sahaba says is really related to what the Prophet must have told them. So this is a hadith. Yeah, there's a way to do that.
Now, if my parents live in Nigeria and I school in the UK, when I am in Nigeria for vacation, do I pray qasr or not?
I would advise you to pray in the mosque with your brothers. Please do that. I also was in that situation. I never prayed qasr when I went to England for school. I never prayed qasr when I came back to Nigeria for holidays because I felt there were mosques and brothers and, the community was there. So why should I stay in the room and keep praying qasr, even though the Shafis agree that my salah is valid? So please try and pray in the mosque. Now, you can have that opinion if you want, and you can, but look, you should always know your opinions with adillah, with reasons, with direct reasons from the Quran or the Sunnah. Don't just follow something because somebody said or because I said do it, right? Allah says in the Quran, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Fear Allah to the best of your capacity. So the best of your capacity is whenever you can do. That's what Aisha did, right? That's her reason, by the way. She said, I have the capacity to pray full. I have the capacity to fast during the journey, so I will, right? That's her belief. But Ibn Umar tells us, no, but it's a rukhsa given to you from Allah, so take it. So please, when you're settled in a land where you can join the Muslims, I think it will not be nice that you always not pray Dhuhr and Asr and Isha in the mosque, and
Yeah, Muhammad,
so
what
this
if
is my, Allah knows best.
yeah, what if the person is a female?
Rules for males are the same for female, except in certain. What do you mean if they're female?
Like the person asking the question, she's a female,
Yeah.
not a male. So I'm asking, what if the person is a female?
Okay. Yes, there's this view that women have more audacity to pray qasr than men. I've read it, and I don't, still I would think that if you're in a place that you're staying so long, maybe we should have a class where we can discuss the issue of qasr and the hadith pertaining to it. Maybe this will clarify. But I would prefer that if somebody is staying long in a place, like they're coming back home, and so why didn't they pray qasr when they're in England? And then why did they pray qasr when they're home, or the other way around? Why didn't they pray qasr? So yeah, please, let's try to just pray full prayers, except when I like. And this is the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah. I'm not saying this of my own accord. So yeah, try to complete your prayers.
Now, mashallah, assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Some scholars reject the first adhan of Jumu'ah because the ijma condition was not met since Imam Ali refused to practice it. You gave it as an example of ijma. Please enlighten us.
Yes, so this is one view, and again, they say that when the ijma was being arranged or agreed upon, did anybody disagree? This is one of the issue that Ibn Abi Dunya raised. So it wasn't. So somebody so the truth is, if you don't do it, it's not haram. You haven't, but if you do it, apparently, if you follow an ijma, then you're following Sharia. This is what the fuqaha tells us. So yes, we don't want to get into the differences of opinion, but that's the thing. Ijma, one of our scholars, well known here within us as students, a very young person who teaches us fiqh and other things. He has memorized all the ijma. The ijma are not so many because it's very hard to have an ijma. The consensus is very hard to find. So you can have and that's why some people differentiated it. I didn't go into details because there are very different classes of ijma. Some say ijma can be in a state, ijma can be in a country, like the Saudi people with regards to the banning based on the consensus of their scholars. And some say ijma, which scholar, is it ijma only related to scholars, or are all the people involved in the ijma? So maybe Mutanan Kaduna saying ijma'i. Well, who amongst them? You mean the women or the men or both, or just the scholars, or just the people, not the scholars? So ijma can be, it's very hard to tie it, like the scholars say, and it's very difficult once it's tied to untie it. And yeah, so that's it. And it's a big topic that I think this book for us beginners would help clarify. He talks about it, inshallah. And he talks about this mas'ala as well of the adhan.
Now, mashallah, Sheikh, the next question is, can ijma consensus be under the same umbrella as bid'ah?
No, subhanallah, it's not a bid'ah. It's not a bid'ah because the companions did it themselves. They agreed on certain things that they didn't have recourse to. That's why Umar radiallahu anh said to the Sahaba, like, now the Prophet is gone. So if we agree on a matter, it's agreed upon, because we will not agree on any matter except that it follows the Sunnah and Quran. And this is the basis for ijma from the hadith of the Prophet. And this is a nas. A nas is an injunction coming from the Quran or the prophetic sayings. The nas for ijma is the Prophet ﷺ says, "Lam yajma' ummati ala dalala." My ummah will never come together. They will never have an ijma' on dalala, on misguidance. So this is a proof that the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, inshallah, we're amongst it, will never go astray when they do an ijma' sincerely. So it's not a bid'ah, it's a source of sharia. There are certain things that we just have to agree, and people do it in places like they can agree in Zaria or in Abuja, like, okay, for the people of Abuja, please do this, and then it can become law. So yeah, it's not a bid'ah.
So Sheikh, the next question is, what is the stand of Islam on euthanasia?
Euthanasia, and that's helping people to kill themselves. Some say it's called assisted suicide. It shouldn't be called with a fancy name like euthanasia. So it depends. You see, I don't want to say do it or don't do it. I don't know much about why people do it. I think this is something that deals with a lot of sociological and maybe psychological study. I've read some few things about euthanasia in the past because I've had a sister once who actually was told to sign a DNR, a do not resuscitate form, which is a form that says if my father is dying, we shouldn't resuscitate him. Why? Because we've tried resuscitating him so many times and he's living on a thin line and he's incredibly suffering and he's in a coma, but when he loses his heartbeats, we have to pump the heart, and it's incredibly expensive. They can't, it costs them about $1,000 every day or more than that to keep him alive. And the doctors then give forms to say, okay, sign the DNR. So if he goes in, if the line goes flat, we don't resuscitate. So these are very problematic issues that it's very crucial that the Usulis weigh into this matter. And I think every case is different. So it depends. Some scholars say that, like the Hanafis, they say if somebody is really dying and you can't help him survive, then allow him to pass away in peace when the time comes. Don't resuscitate. But euthanasia is actually a very active form of killing oneself, knowingly, like putting the injection and saying goodbye to people. I don't think that is a good thing. And I think, as I said, every case is different. I'm not a sheikh. Maybe you should propose this, what would I say? Maybe you should ask for a fatwa from a committee. Don't ask one person, wallahi. Ask a committee that can sit on it and discuss it and look at all the reasons of Sharia that I don't know most of them because I'm a student, and maybe they'll be able to help. But be very cautious with that. May Allah help all the Muslims that are thinking about suicide and killing themselves, because it's a big problem and we shouldn't quickly judge people that are suicidal or have committed suicide, because it's very hard on the families. And people, they kill themselves and their families keep wondering what should we have done to save them, and it's very painful. It's a very painful feeling for the families.
Now, mashallah, Sheikh, this question is about the source of Sharia. You didn't mention ijtihad. Is it not part of the source of Sharia?
We're going there tomorrow. Ijtihad, these are the four that I agreed upon. Ijtihad, there is a lot of, even though we believe in it, we agree with it, we're Malikis, we think it's very important. But Ijtihad, we're coming to it tomorrow. Ijtihad is the process of people struggling to reach an opinion that they cannot find the answer directly. So a mujtahid is a person that does ijtihad. And for people that know me, I always talk about these things in classrooms. So yes, we're coming to that. Is a source according to some school of thoughts, but these are the four ones that nobody can deny. Some say there's no qiyas like Ibn Hazm, but then there is qiyas. Yes, we have to make rulings. Let me give you an example of qiyas that I think will clarify something to you that I forgot to mention. So the Prophet ﷺ spoke about money. Now we have waraq, we have paper money. So we still do qiyas to say, there's riba in paper money because there's riba in gold and silver. Why? They're different things. Yes, they're not, because money is a medium of exchange. There's even though it's not an intrinsic value mode, but it has an extreme valuable. We all have it, inshallah. So if people have money, they put it in their pockets, they give it and exchange it for product. So you have to. So they did qiyas. They say the same riba that can go into gold and silver should be able to go into money, even if it's for maslaha, for the sake of the ummah. Because if you allow it, then bad deals can ruin the world, as we can see during the depression, 2008. Global depression. It's because of that. It's greed and the massive interest rates that were moving about in money all over the world that caused the crash. And yeah, so ijtihad is part of that. We'll come to that tomorrow, inshallah.
I'm sure. Next question: is it bad to keep dogs as guard animal within your compound, even though you don't let them touch you or enter into your house?
Yes, the Prophet allowed that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can leave them to do the shepherding or hunting dogs or the guard dogs. So you can do that. Yeah. You know, the Malikis have a soft spot for dogs. You know, some of the Malikis kept them. Like the great scholar that we all love and cherish, Abu Zayd al-Qayrawani, he wrote the Risala, you know, amazing book. He wrote it for kids during his time, but now even adults are struggling with it. It's a book to teach kids 15 years of age, fiqh, but now, you know, Malan Jafar said it's a shame that, you know, may Allah have mercy on his soul, it's a shame that adults struggle to learn fiqh using the Risala, but that's a testament to their capacity, and it's a testament to our weakness. May Allah make us much more you know, stronger in seeking knowledge. Yeah, so guard dogs are allowed by Sharia because of the hadith.
No, mashallah, Sheikh. Please, what is the ruling of regarding a menstruating woman holding the Quran?
Wow, I don't like this question. Can we just pretend you didn't ask that? You see, whenever I answer that question, I sometimes get in trouble because I'm not giving my opinions. I don't like telling people my opinions. You know, one of the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah, the Prophet said, "Ijabu kullu dhi ra'yin bi ra'yihi," is every bearer of an opinion is amazed by his opinion. This is a sign of our time. It's part of the fake Twitter, Instagram world that I'm not a part of, alhamdulillah. And I'm not saying, I mean, Shuraim, you're doing a good job, keep it up. But yeah, it's making a lot of Muslims lose themselves in depression and thinking about other people and things they should do. But look, my opinion here is not too important. Ibn Taymiyyah says, you have to give us a dalil that is clear that a menstruating woman should not touch the Quran. And he went against it because he said, look, the dalil and Ibn Hazm's opinion in the Muhalla is also that. So the dalil is when Allah says, لا يمسه إلا المطهرين, that nobody touches this except the mutahharin. So people thought mutahharin is people that are purified, and the purification here, Allah didn't say mutahharun. It's not an active purification. So it was referring to angels carrying the book in the heavens, not human beings, because Allah even used the passive form, not the active form. And this is Arabic as well. It's part of the Sharia because you have to look at the Quran. Arabiyyan la'allakum taqilun, as Allah said, it's a book in Arabic for your intellectualization. So they said, look, if you have a dalil that is clear, then give it to us. You know, even Hajj, you know, subhanallah, the Prophet ﷺ was going to Hajj with Aisha and she began to cry. And Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet said to her, Ma abkaki, what's making you weep? And she said, I'm menstruating and it's Hajj. So, you know, the Prophet said to her, if Ali kullu ma yaf'alu al-hajj illa غير Allah tatufi bil bayt. You should do whatever the Hajji person does, except that you shouldn't do the tawaf. So Ibn Taymiyyah says there's recitation of Quran in Hajj, there's dhikr, there's going to Arafat, and she has to do all these things, but not the tawaf, which is a clear cut. There's a dalil. So, you know, Ibn Taymiyyah says, "Kullu shay'in ibaha hatta tujadul mani'." Everything is halal except you bring the mani', an obstacle that says, "Don't do it." So, Ibn Taymiyyah is not convinced that, you know, the woman cannot touch the Quran. He's not, and he has supporters. Even though Albani, Ibn Baz, they chose to go the other way for caution, and you know. Yes, because, and then even in the Maliki madhab, we say, well, we were told by the text that we've read that you know, if you're fearful that you would miss the Quran, you would forget what you've memorized, or you're learning it, then you know, there's a rukhsa. Again, you see, that's why it's important to understand Usool al-Fiqh. There's a rukhsa for women that are memorizing. And, you know, we've studied this in a class recently, and I think the students found it very interesting. So there's a rukhsa there, even in the Maliki madhab. And yes, so even when we talk about, oh, she can touch the small Quran, not the big Quran, you know, the scholars say there isn't any difference. Quran is Quran, you know. And some say, well, when the Prophet wrote portions of the Quran and gave it to the Sahaba to take to the non-Muslims, that's a dalil. But this is something that's still ongoing. But please ask your Sheikh more, and maybe I could share an article that a brother sent recently on one of the groups you created, Shuraim. I think it answers the question better than I did.
Inshallah. I think we'll just take this last question and then we end for today, inshallah. This question is, Amin valid when we say it to an audio or a video being played?
Sorry?
Let's say, for instance, now Sudais is praying on TV and he's praying and you're saying Amin. Is it valid?
Like, you mean following the prayer from the TV?
Yeah. Like, let's say Shuraim is saying Allahumma inna asta'inuka wa nasta'di. You're saying Amin.
No. If you say Amin, that's fine. I mean, he made a dua and you said Amin. Perhaps Allah answers the dua through you, you know, because you recognize the jah or the jalala of Allah when you heard the dua and you responded with an Amin, meaning Allah should please answer the dua, then that's fine. It's allowed. You can even read in a book a dua and say Amin, you know. That's what Al-Ghazali said, that if you read a dua in written form and you say Amin, and then it's fine. I mean, there's nothing that will say you've done something wrong because you said Amin when you heard a dua, an invocation made, you know. And again, this is a qaida in Usool al-Fiqh, that kullu shay'in ibaha hatta, or kullu shay'in halal hatta tujadul mani'. Everything is halal, everything is allowed until you find something that says otherwise. You have to give us a dalil, right? And everything regarding ibadah, you shouldn't perform it until you have the bayan to how to perform it. So I just can't come and start praying if I became Muslim today and say, oh, I became Muslim, I saw the Muslims by observation, this is what they do, so I'll do it. No, I have to go and ask, and then they'll give me the bayan, and then I follow the bayan. That's how the religion works. So I just can't do anything I like when I like. Even with ibadah, you have to wait until you have the mubayyin, and then we're going to talk about that tomorrow, inshallah.
All right, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh, brother Habibi Muhammad.
Yeah, Muhammad, not Sheikh.
All right,
our brother is saying it's time for Asr, you know.
Yeah. So inshallah, we're gonna end for today, inshallah. So the rest questions that haven't been answered, we have almost like all in all, we have 60 questions that have been sent, and then we've answered a few of them, inshallah. So some will just take some that haven't been answered, and we'll pass on to Muhammad if he can answer it maybe later on, inshallah, via the WhatsApp group. So the WhatsApp group, people can send in their question between the hours of 8 p.m. down to 10 p.m. inshallah, and then we'll close the room where Sheikh Muhammad or Brother Muhammad will come and answer the questions, inshallah. Yeah. So
if I don't answer your question, maybe it's because I don't know the answer. And if I see it and I don't know the answer, inshallah, I'll tell you I don't. And maybe I'll try to find it if I can. If I can't, please, you can ask somebody that's more knowledgeable. I'm only going to answer questions I know, to be fair to myself, because the Prophet ﷺ says, whosoever tells a lie against me, فَلْيَتَبَوَّأْ مَقْعَدَهُ فِي النَّارِ, then he shall take his seat in the fire. He should just take his place. He's going there. And I don't want to go there. I don't like heat.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh.
Wa iyaakum, shukran. Barakallah feekum. See you tomorrow, inshallah.
Tomorrow, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Excellent.
How do you leave the meeting? Okay.
All right, Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you all for today's class. Alhamdulillah. So, inshallah, on the WhatsApp group, there's a Q&A session where you can send in your questions. And we want to employ everyone that I hope we are all writing. And the slide that has been sent via the WhatsApp group, please go through it again and before the next class tomorrow, inshallah. So on Thursday, we shall be discussing on gender roles, inshallah. And then we have Asim al-Hakim on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, inshallah. May Allah make it easy for us. May Allah bless you all. And then you can also see the link. I think Abdul Jabbar just posted the link now. So you can click the link and join the group there for ask questions, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayk.